Okay guys, so the next thing you need to know about the verb tener is that when you have it, including the word que, tener que, it means have to. So if you want to say, for example, I have to walk, you would say tengo, which means I have, que, which together with tengo que means I have to, and then you use the verb, caminar. And you use the verb in the simple form. In other words, it still has its ending on it. Now this is the first of lots of verb phrases that you can use, and the idea is that the first verb conjugates, the second verb in the verb phrase does not. So it stays in simple form. So for example, let's say I want to walk. Use the verb quiero, which is conjugated and stem changed. And then you can say to walk. You don't conjugate it. Quiero caminar. Or I need to walk. Conjugate the first one, which is necesitar. So conjugate is necesito. And then walk. Caminar. So you'll notice that in all three of these verb phrases, the first verb conjugates, the second one doesn't. That's the way it is with all verb phrases. First verb conjugates, second one does not. You need to know your gerunds. So the verb estar also means to be. You should know by now that it's conjugated estoy, estás, está, estamos, están, están. Okay, and that means am or are. So for example, if I say estoy, that means I am, you can add a verb on the end. But this one is different than other verb phrases in the fact that you need to use a gerund. Now a gerund in English is when you have ing. So for example, you say I am walking. So the walk, the verb walk, changes to walking. Same thing with this. Estoy, and then you have your cami, and usually it's caminar, but the AR is going to change to ando. Estoy caminando, which means I am walking. You need to know that ER verbs and IR verbs change to yendo. So for example, let's say I am eating. Estoy comiendo, which means I am eating. Let's say I am living. Estoy viviendo. So you changed your endings here. AR changes to ando, ER and IR changes to yendo. So you need to know that. You also need to know what is called your direct objects. Now direct objects in English are pretty easy. You already know it. For example, let's say we could say I drive my car. Drive is your verb. My car is your direct object because you are doing the action directly to the car. So you could also say I drive it. And we know from the context that my car is the same as it. Same thing can happen in Spanish. Let's say I drive my car. Manejo mi carro. But let's go ahead and change this to it. The way you do that in Spanish is for masculine verbs, or masculine nouns I mean, they change to lo. For feminine, they change to la. Carro is masculine, it changes to lo. So you say yo, and then it comes before the verb, lo manejo. You are saying, I drive it. The lo comes before the verb, and you need to keep that in mind. Let's say I hit the ball. But let's change the ball to it. Ball in Spanish is pelota, which is feminine, which is la. We will say yo la pego. Pego means to hit. So the direct object comes before the verb. So you need to know that as well. You need to know your commands. We'll go with our 2 commands for the test. I won't give you any other types of commands. So for example, if I want to tell someone to take something, you can say tomar is the verb to take, and to conjugate that as a command, all you do is conjugate it in the 3rd person singular. So you say tú toma. Tú toma. That means you take. Now, if you're adding an object in there, the object actually gets tacked on to the end of the verb. So if I want you to tell you to take it, you would say tú tómalo. You see, my lo comes after the verb if it's in a positive command, saying to do something. Let's try another command. Walk, for example. Caminar. 3rd person singular of that is, you would say tú camina. We'll make that an exclamation because it's a command. Tú camina. Let's say, so you're telling someone to eat. Come. Come. Again, it's that 3rd person singular right there. Come. Now let's try and say, eat it. You would say, cómelo, which means eat it. And you use your lo to say it. Cómelo. So you need to know that as well. And you need to know negative commands too, because a lot of times we don't just tell people to do something, we tell people not to do something. Now this gets a little confusing, we're going to go over it quickly. Basically you have 2 types of verbs. You have your AR and then your ER/IR. And ER and IR are usually very similar. These are what you could call opposite endings. So when you tell someone to do something, you would say, for example, eat, you would say come. To tell someone not to eat something, you would say no, and then you use the opposite ending to show that you don't want them to do it. No, instead of come, you're going to say comas. Okay, so again, you are using, this time, for the negative commands, you're using the 2nd person singular, not the 3rd person singular. You're using the 2nd person singular and using the opposite ending. I know that's really confusing. Let's practice a couple times. Let's say don't walk. You know that walk is caminar. You know that in the 2nd person singular it's caminas, and then use the opposite ending. No camines, which means don't walk. So let's try one more. Let's say let's use don't, what's a good one? Don't eat. Oh, we already used that. Don't walk. Let's try don't speak. No hablar. You know that 2nd person singular is hablas. We'll say the opposite ending. It's an AR verb. You go to the opposite. No hables, which means don't speak. Now when you throw in your direct object here, you'll notice that this S kind of throws off our ending. You're actually going to put the object in between the no and the verb. So for example, let's say don't eat it, which is right here. We're going to say no lo comas, which means do not eat it. That's really confusing. It just takes practice, and you're going to have to practice and practice. For now, I want you to memorize the rule because it will be on your test. there's irregular commands, and I'm going to only ask you to know 2 of them. Actually, let's just do 1. You'll need to know the verb hacer. And this you can just memorize. There's some irregular commands where you actually use a mix of the first person singular and the second person singular. Hacer is irregular, so its first person singular is hago, and the second person singular is haces. So those mixed would create something, but you're using a negative, so it's your opposite ending. We're going to say haga, so it becomes hagas. No hagas, which means don't do. And you usually hear it with no lo hagas, which means don't do it. I know that's really confusing to figure out, so really you just have to memorize it. So memorize the verb hacer. No lo hagas means don't do it. That will be a question on your test. Let's see. Alright, you did irregular commands. Negative commands. Good. That basically wraps it up for all the grammar that you need to know on the test. I wouldn't focus, you need to focus on the grammar. It's going to have some questions, but what I really, really want you to focus on are descriptions, because you will have a question about descriptions. You need to know all kinds of descriptions. You need to know descriptions about, let me just write this for you, descriptions about yourself. You need to know descriptions about your family. You need to know descriptions about your friends. You need to know what everyone does in those categories. For fun, on a daily basis. You need to know things about your city. So these are things that you will need to be able to describe on the tests. And don't forget that you are watching the next couple of days a video called When Worlds Collide. You will need to pay close attention to that video because you will have some questions about it on the test. It's a very interesting video. Something I want to mention about it is that it describes a lot of errors that the Catholic Church made when they came over from Spain to conquer the Americas. They made a lot of mistakes, but know that that branch of Catholicism doesn't represent all of Christianity. But in the video, they call them Christians. So you need to know that that's different than the Christianity that we practice today. And we'll talk more about that when I get back. Good luck on your test. Good luck on the video. I will see you guys next week.